We are having one of the very interesting session now, and this is which is quite important to all the buyers as well as for supplier. We are having this session on legal framework and insurance regime. Of course, we will be focusing on insurance side. We have with us eminent speakers and panelists from insurance sector. We are very thankful to them for being here. Mr. Hitesh Joshi, General Manager, General Insurance Corporation of India, is here with us. Sir, welcome you. And we have with us S. Dinakaran, Deputy General Manager, New India Assurance, and Ms. Pallavi Sinha, Chief Manager, New India Assurance Company Limited. I welcome you all. And now with this introduction of speakers, I would like to go for the first address of this panel, and it is on the adequacy and efficacy of Indian nuclear insurance pool. May I request Mr. S. Dinakaran, Deputy General Manager, New India Assurance, to come on the dais, please, sir.
Good afternoon to everybody. Yes, morning I was there for about 2 hours in the journey of your summit. The 2 hours journey, there is people talked about cricket match. Somebody is talking about 2020 match, somebody talking about five-day match. Even the best player of Gavaskar is playing after lunch is difficult. So because it's after heavy lunch and a good lunch, then it's difficult to play. Then we'll try to manage what best possible there. I represent New India Assurance Company, a corporate office as a Deputy General Manager. I recently joined this office because I am attached with the Nuclear Corporation, NPCIL. I want to thank this entire summit and also NPCIL for giving New India Assurance Company the opportunity to tell about how the nuclear insurance in Indian market. How I am saying that I am emotionally attached is that way back in 2003 when I joined the industry of underwriter of New India as an engineer. Then I associated with the MAPS Kalpakkam plant. I am associated recently with the construction of the nuclear Kudankulam plant was there. I was just involved as underwriter. Then when the pool was started, as per this nuclear pool was started, then I initially started the initiation. Then I went out of this particular office where I was doing that. Then I went and moved out. Then I come back now at the corporate office 1 week before I joined this office. Basically this entire 10 to 15 minutes, we are going to touch upon this. How the nuclear insurance possible in India, what are the act in Indian market, how the international convention talks about, how we differs, where are the possibility of some improvement which we can able to do that. That's how we are going to have this 10-20 minutes. Just look at it. This entire, first of all, before going to the nuclear liability, I just look at is that this in terms of property underwriters, property underwriting for all the nuclear plants being done traditionally with respect to the cold zone assets. Then we have come to that international convention of 1960, 63. Then 2015 convention was telling that okay, we should have liability insurance also. When liability insurance also evolved in international market, the Indian market said that okay, we are not very keen because there is no Indian market has not made any agreement with the international convention. Then what Indian market says that okay, we cover only cold zone asset because as an underwriter in Indian market we are finding it very difficult to identify what is kind of liability which can arise because of the odd zones. The odd zone is a really odd zone. As an underwriter, if anything happens for us is a full blown issue. So what we as underwriter was we are waiting that how to come out of the solution for this. Then the international convention. What the international convention talks about is basically the global regime of compensation to victims across the globe. Because basically in international convention talks about is that it's not only India, it's basically is for there is a inter-country issues also there because of nuclear liability. The international convention will address that. Then this it provides this establishment of the what is basically is a insurance protection which should have as an operator. Then the international convention says that there should be either you should have insurance protection, otherwise you have the financial protection. Either one of that you should have it. That's what the international convention says that. Then how India is that India finally is in 2010 when the international convention and all is coming is there. Then India is that 2010 we have come with the act. The government of India has come with the act which says that okay, there's a nuclear in Indian market. Operator should have some insurance protection, other financial protection. Otherwise, if you are supplier of any of the equipments or any of these items with respect to nuclear plant, you should have some protection. That is how the insurance Indian market has started. Adherence to the convention will scope for adding the funding to the international market. Indian Act, what it says is that if you are the operator, it is on no fault liability basis. It's not that what the Act is 2010 talks about is Civil Nuclear Liability Act talks about is no fault liability. It means that irrespective of the overall cost damage, there is a liability falls on the operators. It is not like the fault has been proved because it is no fault liability which is available in even motor insurance in the Indian market also. Similarly, the Nuclear Act says that it has to be no fault liability. That whatever the cost, there is any nuclear liability somebody sues, then it falls on the operator. Then this operator, what the Act also says, the operator will not be liable for two cases. What it says that if there is a natural disaster on exceptional character, the Act says that the operator is not liable. One more exclusion, what the Act says is that if any because of hostility or civil war is anything happen, the government of India anything if it declares, then the operator not necessary to be liable as per the Act of the liability. What this Act of 2010 talks about is that they have put a cap of 1,500 crores is the cap as per the operators concerned. The operators specifically say that maximum amount of liability for each nuclear incident is 300 SDR, which is almost equal to 2,600 crores as per the Act. But Act clearly says this, as operator, it says that the maximum liability for the operator for any incident of nuclear is 1,500 crores in Indian rupees. Then in case of the fuel processing, spent fuel processing units, then there is a minimum of 300 crores should be the maximum liability. Then this is as far as this research reactor, 100 crores. This is specifically, the Act specifically says that what is the limit the operator of the plant should have it as insurance. Then Government of India, what other it says is that if there is anything which exceeds 1,500 crores as per the Act, then the remaining falls back on the Government of India. Then as per this, the 2,600 crores is the total as per the Act. Then the balance amount falls back on the Government of India. Operator should have either insurance protection, otherwise financial protection. That is how the basic requirement as per the Act is concerned. So if you don't have any of this protection, then you cannot run as an operator. That's the basic requirement today as per the Act in 2010 of Government of India. Then there is some issue comes is that there's how this our Provision Act is with respect to suppliers. What the Act says is the International Convention never says that you should have a right of recourse in terms of supplier of any of the equipments to the operators. In Indian Act is 2010 it says that if any fault or nuclear liability, civil nuclear liability falls on the particular operator as per the Act can have a recourse against the suppliers. That is not all available. Now there is not all there in International Convention. The Indian Act is clearly says that recourse can be passed on to the suppliers. This is what I just telling that this is how the comparison of the international conventions and the Indian Act is that as far as limitation, Indian Act says both the limitation 2,600 crores or 300 million SDR. In terms of the Indian Act, it says as an operator you should have 1,500 crores as a basic policy of protection. Other is a financial protection you should have it. Remaining whatever is there, it falls back on this. The right of recourse, as I said already, the right of recourse as per the Indian Act, it is available. The International Convention never talks about the right of recourse. It's only operators, any liability as per the operator is only liable. That's what the International Act talks about. Requirement of insurance is concerned, then it should have either insurance or financial protection, or it's a combination of two. That's what the Indian Act says. Okay, you have 1,500 crores, certain portion you can have an insurance protection, certain portion can be in terms of your financial. Suppose if a company or organization is good enough and financially on its own. What are the solution we have found in India is that, because we know that, as I told already, that Indian market, that we have a solution in terms of the cold zone assets. Cold zone assets is Indian market is capability. Indian market has got capacity. Indian market has understood that what is the cold zone asset is nothing but the indirect in another form of thermal power plant. So basically, it's only the fuel is different. Otherwise, so only the insurance company found that the Indian underwriters, we found that how to find a solution for the hard zone in terms of there is a liability concern. We don't cover the property, it's a hard zone. We cover only properties only in terms of the cold zones. Then Indian market felt that let's have one pool. The Indian market, based on the capacity of the different underwriters in India, because about 11 underwriters in India has given the capacity to the market, led by GAC. GAC is the pool leader for the Indian market as far as terrorism, as far as terrorism also they are the pool, and nuclear liability, civil nuclear liability also they are the leader. New India, probably I can say that we have given the maximum capacity, 40% of the capacity of the Indian market is given by New India. The entire pool is managed by GAC. The 40% of capacity is given by New India Insurance Company. We are the major players in terms of the capacity provider. As I said already, the cold zone assets is already done. So only we are giving our 40% capacity as a insurance company. Pool can cover, there is two aspects. One is there are two types of cover protection you need it, only for the supplier who is supplying the equipments for the plant. Other one can be for the purpose of the operators. As far as India is concerned, basically the entire plant is operated by the NPCIL. So the NPCIL has taken protection for the entire, there are about 22 reactors they have taken insurance for that. 22 reactors, roughly about 1,500 crores is the total, the sum insured they have chosen. This is what today's Indian market framework. Then we have, as per the Act, then capacity 1,500 crores, that is the maximum aggregate limit which can be done. The 12, sorry, it's not 11. Then the 12 non-insurance, including GAC, the reinsurer, joint as for the capacity. GAC is the pool manager, as I said already. So GAC manages the entire pool, because what are the premium we are getting it as a pool, then the entire pool is how the retro, everything done is being done by GAC. That's how the capacity being taken care of. So then there are certain, these are the plants which has been covered by us as of now. So there are about 2 reactors have been covered, 7 locations have been covered by NPCIL as a operator. If you look at these suppliers, as of now, we have only 2 suppliers, we have insurance. None of the other suppliers, maybe your contract between your operator and yourself, then what is the limit of liability it talks about. We have only 2 suppliers as of now as a pool. So there is no other suppliers are chosen. Maybe they are good in managing with their finance. That may be the reason why they are not able to do that. So, but we are trying to convince, this is a forum what we thought that, okay, we have a pool who has been created. Pool can give a support of 1,500 crores. There may be certain clarification may be needed if as a sub-supplier. There are certain challenges are there. So that we have to discuss ourselves and we have to find some solution, what are best way. The supplier, we have protection. That's a pool. The pool gives a supply, it means insurance protection for the suppliers also. So that can be taken care of. So suppliers also can be covered. That's, as I said already, means that's the supplier. Suppose if a supplier for the construction policy, then the protection can be given up to 7 years. The supplier can be given protection up to 7 years. So suppose if the operator, okay, it's an annual policy, is operator. In a supplier is a long-term, because the construction can be a long-term period. So then international market, nobody gives beyond that balance sheet, they don't keep it open. That's why basically they gives a 7 years period as far as this construction policy of the supplier is concerned. Claims management, this is how the claims management done. Suppose if any claim in there, then there is a nuclear operator is held responsible for this. If a nuclear operator can have, as per the Indian Act, can fall back on the supplier if there is any fault which has arisen because of the supplier. Suppose they feel that if supplier is responsible for that, the right of recourse falls on the suppliers. Then again it falls back on the terrorism pool, nuclear pool, then the nuclear pool takes care of that entire thing. I thought that I'll just brief you, just some introduction, so that because the time is very short, then okay, we're running out of time, then we are 20 overs, the last 5 overs, 6 overs, you have to play, means you have to play fast. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dinakaran sir, for the overview of the Indian nuclear insurance pool, and having presenting your thoughts in such a simplified way. It will come handy for everybody's use for suppliers and buyers as well. So now continuing with our discussion on insurance side. Now we have one important panel discussion on INIP's current status and way forward for reinsurance and digital products like blockchain solutions. So for this, we have with us eminent panelist, Mr. Hitesh Joshi, General Manager, General Insurance Corporation of India. Sir, I would like to request you to please come on the stage. We have with us Mr. N.R. Choudhary, Executive Director, Commercial, Nuclear Power Corporation. Sir, I would like to request you to please come on the dais, sir. And we have with us Ms. Pallavi Sinha, Chief Manager, New India Insurance. Ma'am, please come on the dais. I welcome all the panelists on the dais to have your seats, please. And just as a brief, as Dinakaran sir has already spoken a lot on the Indian insurance pool, this is just as he was rightly stating, that it's an outcome of CLND Act legislated to bring the much needed transparency to compensate the victims in case of any nuclear disaster. And it is done in line with the internationally accepted protocols to enable India's entry as a state party to the International Convention on Supplementary Compensation. In 2015, GIC of India, New India Assurance and other insurance companies came together to have a pool of INR 1,500 billion capacity to provide the insurance coverage. But a lot of water has flown through the river since then. We are here to discuss on this critical topic, particularly at a time when country is poised for further scale up of nuclear power. And so this was just a brief, on that. And as far as the issue is concerned, it has a lot of importance for the and there are different perspectives from different stakeholders, from buyer side, supplier side. And there are certain views expressed by international suppliers also. So perhaps we would be able to have an insight on all those issues. So, sir, I welcome you all. So, starting with the as a format of this discussion, we would be starting with the opening remarks of all eminent panelists, and then we will be going into the deeper aspect, and then question answer session from the audience, and finally the concluding remarks. So starting with the Hitesh Joshi sir. Sir, your initial opening remarks and your thoughts on current status of Indian nuclear insurance pool.
Good afternoon. I think it is well known to the learned audience that this is a scenario or a risk which tests the limits of insurability, given the frequency aspect, which is supposed to be rarest of rare, and again severity aspect, which can be very catastrophic in the realm of it can match the severity of a natural catastrophe, and the impact can go on for decades, and the human cost can be also fairly high, severe, matching the catastrophe. So when the risks are of this nature are presented to the insurance market, where limits of insurability are tested, the usual solution is pool. And that is what was adopted in India also. There are globally something like 30 pools. And this is the way to go. This is probably the only way we can manage the risk. The only other supplement which can come is essentially from the backing of the governments or treasury. And there is some possibility of reducing and broad basing the risk management through reciprocation, but it will depend on the risk appetite of the pool members. So I think the pool has done well for itself during last 7 years, but it has its own limitations, and we are exploring further ways to improve the capacity and improve the risk management of the pool. Thank you.
Thank you for your remark.
First of all, on behalf of NPCIL, as a operator of 22 reactors, I would express my thanks to the insurance fraternity in India, especially GIC, New India Assurance, for their rightful and timely initiative in 2015, and when we could have this product available for ourselves. And it's a quite innovative concept they had come up in consultation with Ministry of Finance, DAE, and even NPCIL were part of it. The major issue is that there are two insurance products we require. One is for operator insurance, another is supply insurance. In case of supply insurance, as many of us know, the international technology suppliers who are having a dialogue with India on many issues have expressed on many fora the reservation to comply with the provisions that recourse to supplier. And just now, Dinakaran sir also has expressed, maybe later in the conversation, I would like to know from him. Internationally, he said this provision to recourse to the supplier do not exist. So I just want to ask whether expressly it is not provided in the convention that recourse shall be taken, or it is prohibited that recourse should be taken, because both things may mean differently. Expressly not providing like it is provided in section 17B of our act means a different thing, still implied right to the operator to have a recourse to the supplier in the legal framework of the country, whereby the contracts are governed by whatever law you call, either you call it common law or any other law, still do exist. Whether that has also been positively prohibited is one of the questions that we need to answer. Second thing, the insurance pool or even the insurance, reinsurance faculty or whatever the entire chain what we provide is faced with the two problems. First is, being a nuclear, there is a tag of safety, and many of the insurance sector stakeholders in the ecosystem would not be ready to contribute their funds to that. So the availability of funds is limited. Second is, we have been listening the words right from the beginning on many areas, change of mindset. Is it a unduly rigid mindset of the few suppliers, whether domestic or outside the domestic, that I will not bear this responsibility, and to the extent possible, let me steer my way of getting away from this responsibility? Or it is a genuine cause which they have. And if there is some genuine cause beyond the mindset of not accepting the responsibility, certainly we have to look forward to find a solution for it. Thank you.
A very good afternoon to all the participants here and my panelists over here. So most of the points have been touched about in the earlier opening addresses. However, one thing is there that we, GIC is the pool manager, and on the insurance front, we are again a consortium of 11 insurers, with New India having the largest share, that is 40% of the nuclear pool, which we are supporting. And we have been actively involved in talks with few suppliers also for the policies and the terms and conditions which they are seeking. But we have not seen very much encouraging response from the supplier side till date as of now. To be very precise, we have just 2 supplier policies as of now. And the operator, of course, NPCIL has the major policy which is getting renewed annually. Our policies are basically driven by the regulatory framework which is there, and we very much abide by whatever the terms and conditions that has been worked upon by the executive committee of INIP. Now the topic here which we were giving was also about the blockchain solutions. So going by the innovations, of course, that is the blockchain is the future, because mostly it is, we can say in one way that it is one of the most reliable way to enforce data integrity and in the workflows and processes. However, the quality of data which we are entering, it is not for data rectification. So going further, if we are going to utilize the blockchain solutions for insurance, Because as we said, insurance, INIP is working on pool system, and there are multiple participants when we go along with the insurance pool through direct insurance or through retrocessions. Multiplicity of the parties makes a blockchain solutions, or what we say DLT, that is distributed ledger technology, a very welcome step in the direction of managing the whole show efficiently. And recently, like 6 European countries have taken a step forward, and they have given this a try. B3I Solutions, that is the latest update in this area. So going forward, only thing which I would like to currently say is we need to innovate in order to bring in the synergies and build up more capacities and bring about efficiency in this particular domain. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. So basically, moving to our second round, now I would be focusing on, what sort of, particularly, because all of you are expert in your own field of work. So, as now in industries scaling up, for example, right, and nuclear is as we have seen since 2 days. Yesterday also, and then in the morning session also. So, but nuclear is, there's a lot of talk of scaling up nuclear. So, how this insurance pool is evolving. So, your answer, please. How the nuclear pool is evolving, in respect to the scale up, how it can support the scale up of nuclear industry in the country.
I think during last 6-7 years, it has done well, and it will continue. I don't see any challenge. Some of the challenges, as my co-panelist mentioned about the mindset, those have to be separately addressed. But I think pool is catering to the need to the best of its ability, and it will continue to extend support, but within the certain constraints which are inherent given the exposures and risk appetite of the players is concerned.
Sir, basically, basically, like ma'am was also mentioning that, suppliers are not coming in that way. So, of course, there have been efforts, but is there any other, sort of initiatives so that this concern of suppliers, some of the suppliers, can be get
I think people who are interacting with suppliers during all these years, they know that this progress is fairly sturdy there. So, as he rightly used the word, the rigid mindset, that needs to be dug deeper into. I think he can.
To the limited extent, about the suppliers insurance, as Madam has mentioned, it was taken. There can be 3 reasons for it. As I said earlier, also rigid mindset. Other can be concern or confidence. Now, if you see realistically, how come the liability will get imposed on the supplier in a legal framework that has been proposed? There would be a commission who would be doing the detailed analysis of the accident based on technological facts and evidences. Operator's liability is no fault liability. Now, even if a nuclear accident takes place, physically we don't have to tell what will be the situation, from where you can take out the evidences and how it can be legally established beyond the doubt by the commission that XYZ supplier or his equipment was faulty and therefore it was there. So, speaking actually, or even that actual probability by which any supplier who has supplied in equipment, the liability will be clearly getting established him, even if the legal framework and that commission acts on a most fastest mode available, is very, very rare. And that would give a confidence to a supplier that even if without this insurance policy, I can manage. So that is the thing when I say it's a confidence aspect of it. Now when say concern aspect of it, many times it is a link with the rigid mindset kind of approach. Like when I sell a product, I charge a premium for my excellence and my expertise in that. But now mirror image of that, when somebody asks you, you be responsible for it also. If obviously proved within the legal framework to be paying compensation for that, then I don't want to do that kind of thing. So this is a rigid mindset. This has to change. These are the 2 sides of the coin. To the extent we can avoid, because the capacity addition is a key concern. So practically to move ahead approach adopted by government and entire ecosystem, they won't be insisting that you have to take it as that kind of thing. So things are moving ahead that way. So as long as the status quo continue, it will go. But now you are about other part of the performance of the pool. So far as sir has rightly said, it is performing smoothly as far as the operator is concerned. But now, as we are seeing that accelerated nuclear power capacity to meet the overall larger perspective climate change and need of requirement, each and every dimension of this nuclear business, I'm not only saying the operator business, the ecosystem supply has to be strengthened. So even in this dimension, there need to be a talk with the intervention of Government of India, Ministry of Finance, like we did in 2015, to work out some other system or system mechanism where the parallel pool or augmentation of pool can take place. We can still something that innovative financing has to work out, because with this limited pool available, I think supporting the larger power plants coming in, that would be difficult kind of.
Ma'am, your thought? I mean, how is
Yeah.
evolving, and for example, the supply, how would you be basically addressing the supply?
Yeah, yes, it is already spoken. This pool is performing, like Hitesh sir said, pool is performing quite well. It's going on smoothly. The administration of the pool is going on very smoothly, and the corpus is being built up. Like we need to have patience to, so that a certain corpus is built up in the pool, so that further again one jump start can be given to this particular aspect. And another thing, like rigid mindset is there. Most of the times when we have interacted, even though the contract value, I'm talking about the suppliers, like just sharing a small experience, like suppose even if the contract is for 3 crores, many a times they'd ask for a liability of 1500 crores. So but 15, this shows that somewhat concern is there at the back of their minds in few cases. But then for us it becomes difficult, because 1500 crores is the entire pool capacity, which already is there utilized. So over and above, some little bit of more clarity, maybe by regulations or maybe by the regulatory authorities, are required to bring about in this particular arena, so that uh, maybe it becomes turner for the supplier side to become more aware about this, and then take up the things further proactively.
Thank you very much. Now, coming to the next round of our discussion, sir was mentioning about the risk. So, risk and then reinsurance, and then are there any thoughts on interpooling of Indian insurance pool with the international pools? And does our legal provisions allow us to do that?
No, as I said, that it revolves around, it hinges on the risk appetite of the players. And the players have given capacity with a limited objective of catering to the Indian national challenge which we are facing. So per se, I think most of the players or none of the players is inclined to start writing nuclear insurance in a meaningful way. GIC can of course consider it, but then it should be mutual, it should be reciprocation, and I doubt whether it is actually happening. That level of trading and reciprocation is a good idea, absolutely fantastic idea in theory, but given the risk appetite of the players who have given the capacity, New India is here, I don't think they would like to venture into that territory.
And does our legal provision allow us for interpooling with international pools?
I don't think there is any regulation, because reinsurance and pools are essentially free market. There is no legal restriction per se.
Absolutely.
It is mostly driven by the risk appetite and economics and attractiveness of the economic attractiveness of the proposal.
Now, like augmentation about by having a relation with internal health pool, that is the one dimension you highlighted. Maybe as I mentioned, what I earlier mentioned also, we have to think beyond or out of the box. If we can say like because of the pollution that was caused by coal generating power plant, as a carbon cess that initially it was I think rupees 50 per ton of the coal, now it has gone up to 400. Such fund can be levied, because now it is not an issue about of nuclear power corporation of GIC in New India. It's a national issue, and there has to be, it can't be left only to the free market forces to act upon that. So government on this coal can have some says and use those funds. I am sure it will go to a few hundred crores in a year, and that kind of source can be used to augment the pool also. Because now steps have to be taken, at least in 10 years, suppose the new accelerated program we undertake and the first reactor start coming for the operations. And if there are different entities constituted like NPCIL, NTC, joint venture, we were talking of deregulation today morning and decentralization. If any change of law takes place, private sector comes into that. So the pool will require to cater a lot of requirement. Otherwise, it will be a no-go because the law will not be amended now, obviously for the political reasons and all that. So such kind of policy government can think of it, carbon cess, and then part of that be given to the pool for augmenting the pool. I think that is the need of the hour.
Ma'am, your thoughts on interpooling and
Sir just had a solution to this particular problem. So this is one worthwhile solution which can be taken up and which can be, of course, pursued. Otherwise, pooling is again a subject matter of reinsurance, and Hitesh sir has already commented on that. So I concur with him on that issue.
thank you very much. Thank you very much. And now moving to next round. Basically this is about insurance sector only. For example, because there was questions coming from stakeholders that we engage with. How is the insurance industry gearing up for technology-based solutions, digital solutions like blockchain products you rightly mentioned, and to bring the efficiency and in the system? And is India looking for blockchain platforms like B3I as it is done in Europe? And how prepared is industry?
I think like most of the technologies which before they are fully understood, fully adapted, fully integrated in as a routine course of as a daily kind of life functioning, there are there tends to be either overestimation of the technology or underestimation. I think that blockchain falls into that category. Because what are its exact capabilities and what will be the human aspect in terms of the adapting change? I think these are two big questions. We have a simple thing like, say, going online on our banking transaction. And of course, our adoption of UPI is a commendable story in itself. But still, it takes a lot of human adaptability to adapt this technology. There are very significant projections made of something like, say, $5 billion and all that. That will be the savings if blockchain is adopted. But I remain a skeptic. At the end of the day, not every insurance product is amenable to blockchain. There are certain products, particularly which are scalable, particularly if there is a huge scale, blockchain can be of great advantage. Say, it can be a very good tool if the product is parametric. But otherwise, whatever are the efficiency expectations, and the limitations of the industry in terms of the process efficiency, if anybody thinks that those can be absolutely compensated or removed by blockchain, I think it is asking for the moon. It is an enabler, and any enabler is going to give you a lever, but be a basic foundation on which that lever can act. So I am a huge skeptic of the blockchain. Of course, it has potential. Smart contracts and automatic trigger and quick settlement and so many things are there, but it requires two things essentially. One is the scale and second is the adaptability. I think we need to wait. The first reinsurance contract probably was signed in this year, I think April or something. So we have been hearing blockchain for more than 5 years now, I think, but then things move fairly slow because it requires tremendous adaptation and the infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sir, your thoughts on having
basically this is not exactly my domain, but and even the subject matter falls within the processing of the insurance activity. If I can give a example, 30 years back, the banking system was moving from manual ledger to the internet banking and automated. Now, even if we call it a second phase, insurance company moves with that with the due caveats what sir has added, it may improve the efficiency. But the problem we are facing as a nuclear industry today, I don't think it will have any bearing per se of adding the pool or even easing out the insurance products.
Your thoughts? How prepared is industry basically for such solutions?
my personal view is that blockchains or DLT, they are still at the discussion stage. We are still on the drawing board. And no, like Hitesh sir was also saying, there are pros and cons both attached to it. Now, because of its association with cryptocurrencies, it has also gained a little bit of notoriety. But then ultimately, it might be, maybe it is the future some 20 years down the line, which we may not, we will not be able to predict as of now. uh, there are both, like I said, pros and cons. So until we are very sure, and nuclear sector being a very, very sensitive sector, so we need to be extra careful with this. So as of now, though it has potential, a little more discussion needs to be initiated, and it needs to be, conducted at various fora, IT fora also, industry fora also, insurance forum also, everywhere, to arrive at some conclusion, and then finally go ahead with this.
Thank you very much. Now I will not be taking much time, and I will be moving to the question answer session. So we will be moving to questions from our audience. Please.
Yeah. With the reactors we have, like PHWRs and the imported reactors, generation 3 and 3 plus, including SMRs, I would say that the probability of any accident requiring compensation is very low. I want to know, like passenger cars, whether we have a system of NCB, no claim bonus, for the subsequent year premium. If it is not there, I feel strongly that it should be there.
So, would you like to answer?
I think in my initial comments, I touched upon the limits of insurance, and we do admit, and all of us are fairly aware, that the frequency of nuclear incidents or accidents is very, very, very low, and that makes it far more challenging to determine the premium. When no claim bonus is given on a car insurance, actually it is already loaded. So, I mean, at the end of the day, there is no free lunch. It doesn't help actually, because here we are faced with a situation where capacity is a huge constraint. So, of course, it can bring some pain, but I think it is in the larger interest of all stakeholders to create a corpus and augmenting the pool through some innovative financing mechanism. If there is an NCB, the premium will not be the same, premium will increase, and then it will come back to you by way of NCB. So, sorry to disappoint you, sir.
Just wearing the two hats, when I negotiate with them, I ask them the same question. But again, if I detach myself from NPCIL and consider a larger part of nuclear industry, I know the reason for not being able to provide is a very valid reason. So we do all our processing properly so that we ask for it, they give the reason, we record it, but we move ahead.
Yeah. I wanted to understand one thing. Twice or thrice it has been said that insurance pool is working very fine, very smoothly. So does it mean that NPCIL is paying premium every year and nothing is happening because there is no reimbursement? Question number one. Question number two, pool is of 1500 crores, which the operator is supposed to bear. 1500 to 2600, I am told Government of India will bear. What happens if it is 4000 crores, beyond 2600 crores?
So, sir, the first question regarding what if there is no claim, what happens, right? I think.
I was reacting to the statement, pool is working very smoothly.
So, sir, I think the stakeholders and risk carriers are having the confidence that there is insurance to support them and to meet the legal liability. I think that is what makes the entire industry functioning smoothly. If I venture to, I make a bold statement, insurance is essentially not meant for recovery in anticipation of recovery. I think no buyer should even envisage that the incident will happen and recover. It is supposed to be a very remote event, and it gives the confidence for the commerce and economy to run smoothly. So, that is a usual common mindset that insurance is taken as a cost. It is not supposed to be a cost. It is supposed to be a risk management tool which gives peace of mind. This is what is probably lacking in the entire insurance sector, and that is why it is a push product, because people don't fully appreciate that it is a risk management tool. That is why most of the life policies, if you see today, people look for some endowment or some repayment at the end of the policy. That is not the ideal risk transfer mechanism. It is very, very suboptimal.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that question is probably left unanswered. I think we will, and I don't think anybody has the answer. We have to wait for the
I
corpus to
would
be built.
answer to the sirs both question. The nuclear insurance pool is fine. The statement has two dimension. There has been no claim. That means the credit goes to the operational team of NPCIL that operators are working fine, or plants are working fine. And second, when pool is working fine, that means whatever the arrangement has worked out by the entire Ministry of Finance, GIC, Insurance in New India, and even NPCIL and DIE to address the legal compliance requirement without which we can't even operate the plant is working sufficiently. There has been no RTI, there has been no query from the even anti-nuclear lobby. This is not sufficiently addressing the question, and 6 years, 7 years down the line, is everything okay? That's why it is second interpretation, it is working fine. Now, regarding your second question, the question which I initially posed to Mr. Dinakaran also, I will repeat that question and then come back to your answer. He said internationally right to recourse is not there. So I asked him, is it expressly not mentioned or is it expressly prohibited? No, in law, many things not mentioned does not mean it does not exist. Now, just going by the legal framework, 1500 crores will be no fault liability for NPCIL up to 2600 it will to Government of India under the Act. Now, beyond that, if any claim arises and the claimant has a legal right to raise the claim, it will be on the shareholders of the company. And shareholders is President of India.
Yeah, I have a question. Actually, three quick questions. First, how much has accumulated in the corpus of the INP? Has it reached 1500 crores, or is the corpus yet to be full? Second, which are the two suppliers who have taken the suppliers policy? And third, what are the lessons that insurers have learned from the Fukushima episode?
Surplus, I believe, is around 700 to 800 crore. Supply, we will talk about.
See, actually, we have a client confidentiality clause also, so it would not be proper for me to mention the names of the clients directly over here. I can just tell you one policy was taken some 3-4 years back. Another policy has been taken only in the month of September this year. So this has been the gap. But meanwhile, we have had multiple, inquiries. That I can tell you. But the contract value was on the lower side, some 6 crores and 3 crores. But I would like to excuse myself, from naming the clients. That is one thing. And what was your other question?
What is the extent of the corpus that has accumulated?
Corpus said, around approx 700 crores approx.
So what about the balance 800?
That we are taking on our net. We are using our capacities for that.
Our capacities would mean...
Insurers are using their capacities for that as of now.
If there is a claim, the players who have committed capacity, they will share the loss in a pro rata manner. Whatever share they have committed on paper, the same share they will bear that claim.
Okay, and the last question is...
lessons. I think it is
from Fukushima.
It is a result of lessons during all these various consultations and negotiations and exchange of views which happened between all the stakeholders, starting with the operator, the ministry, the insurance, and everything that has resulted into what we call smooth functioning of the pool.
Just finally, isn't it true that a lot of, the Fukushima operators were faced with like giant claims of compensation recently?
Sorry, I didn't get it.
Could you repeat your question, please?
Yeah, isn't it true that the operators of the Fukushima plant have been faced with giant compensation claims?
This question presumes that there is some information about such claim on the Tokyo Power Company, if I rightly know. What is your source of information of having this conjecture that they are facing the claim, or it is a guesswork based on some news floating around? It's a news. Maybe you can check up with the sources of the news. At least in my capacity, or even I can vouch for them also, we would not be able to make any official statement on that. Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, good afternoon. As we are talking about this INIP pool, and in future of we are going to come up with so many nuclear power project. This pool is working fine, that we have understood from the panel's discussion. But what I am thinking, like nuclear power, we are taking the insurance policy like SFSP policy for our cold zone assets. Anyways, it is not available. So my first question is, like, we are into operation for more than 60 years. So is there any thought process for covering our hot zone assets by any insurance policy? First thing. And second thing, even for the cold zone assets, what I understand, like the premium charges by the general insurance for nuclear industry is much higher in comparison to our peer player, like thermal and all. Just having the nuclear tag on it. Otherwise, nuclear per se is nowhere related in cold zone assets. Anyways, we are not going to cover any incident which is occurring from the nuclear this thing. So why is there, like, we are being treated little bit different from the per se other industry player as far as SFSP policy is concerned? Thank you.
Taking your second question first regarding your benchmarking yourself against coal, I think that benchmarking probably is not correct. And secondly, I think it is more a matter of economics and demand and supply, rather than just saying that, okay, in say France, the rate is this, and in say UAE, the rate is this. I think it is more a matter of demand and supply, and it is also the matter of the liability versus premium, and in what time frame shall we be able to build a corpus, because the scale of operations and the premium volume and the exposures in different territories will be different. So it is not an easy thing to compare across geographies.
Maybe if I understood your question correctly, I think it didn't intend to compare across the geographies. Just to take a plain example, suppose NTPC, pardon me if I'm talking of a wrong capacity, just to give example, has some 700 megawatt power plant, and the balance of the plant, whatever the within there, and similar insurance nuclear power corporation take, which is a non-nuclear zone, exactly civil plant. Then why should be there a difference premium charge for nuclear power plant and it is higher? Because the risk and the probability with which the accident can take place in cold zone for thermal power plant and even nuclear power plant is same, because we are isolating the nuclear cause for the accident. So that is your question. Am I right? Okay. He didn't mean to say across the territories like France, Gulf, or even in India. Within India, suppose hypothetically two plants are located side by side, exactly same balance of plant, asset value, everything, same vintage also. So still the premium is different. That is what his question.
I think we can take a look at it. We can go deeper into it and take a look. No issue. We are open to that.
Yeah, could you please tell me that is it there's just statutory provision that this 1500 crores should be through insurance company only or through insurance pool only, or whether NPCIL can maintain a 1500 crore on its own and meet the statutory requirement of civil liability?
That is a choice of NPCIL, but 1500 crore has to be maintained as a financial security or insurance policy. Now that 1500 crores will be taken aside and will have to be deposited with the DAE, who is the governing body to regulate that kind of thing. Now it's a management call which we find a comfortable solution. In a situation when we are going for expansion mode and each and every rupee which will be available for putting into the projects is valuable, so obviously insurance premium is a much paying premium will be a much economical solution.
Sir, just one follow-up question. Suppose I borrow 1,500 from the market. So per month interest, whether that is more than the premium which we pay to the insurance company or less than the premium?
You are losing one focus on the silent point. It is not in that case what you gave a comparison of borrowing 1,500 from the market, interest to be compared with the premium. In case any loss occurs, the entire 1,500 crores will be on NPCIL's head. In case of insurance, it is not on NPCIL's head.
But in long run, you may accumulate the corpus at your end itself and you will be free from
Okay,
the
but again, it's a probabilistic analysis to build up the corpus of 1,500 crores. Say even if you save the premium of 100 crores just per annum, I'm taking a hypothetical number, it will take 15 years. Within this 15 years, anything happens, the entire 1,500 cost loss is a balance sheet of NPCIL. So basically, it's a basic question, not only related to CLNT Act. Even anybody takes a Mediclaim policy, so he can save the premium for a certain period of years instead of taking 5 lakh, 10 lakh, 50 lakh insurance claim policy. But that will go from his own pocket, though he saves it. In insurance, at the cost of premium, somebody pays. And insurance is a risk and probability question. It's everybody's perception.
Now we
What
will
is the
take
risk?
one more question and maybe two. Quick.
Yeah,
please. And
it's not a question actually. The question that he raised, what happens if the claimant is claiming more than 2,600? I think there is a convention on joint supplementary compensation. Actually, the whole world is having a pool of insurance that we are talking at a national level. There is a pool at the international level also. So probably the question that you were posing regarding, you wanted to have a discussion with the other speaker. Answer lies there itself actually, that as we are actually having a insurance pool, probably government also can approach them, and as a part of nation we have some premium to pay into that pool actually. So if it goes more than 2,600 crores, probably we can get a compensation from such kind of way. So and India is a signatory to that convention.
Yeah, India is a signatory to CAC, Convention for Supplementary Compensation. That is there, but the finer points are with the government of India. Let's say.
one final question.
Sir, my question is relation to the pool. So why do we find that the terrorism pool has the success of a maglev train and the nuclear pool has the motion of a slow local train when reinsurance coverage is available? And one comment to make also is regarding suppliers. What our statute hasn't taken care of is the common law liability. There is a reinsurance solution available. We can help, via New India, anybody who is interested in that common law, because what is happening is people are anxious about the fact that there could be a motion under the act also, but under common law also. So that solution is available. But why is, the terrorism pool has done 20 years and accumulated a great corpus. Why is it that the nuclear pool is only at the current level it is after 7 years?
In my understanding, I think the comparison is not really correct, because terrorism, every single person is exposed to terrorism. Every commercial entity, every residential asset, every industrial asset is exposed to terrorism. It is across the country. The scale is there. So that has allowed the terrorism pool to build a corpus of 10,000 crore plus. Against that, there are only a handful of nuclear plants. So, and of course, terrorism also at one point in time tested the limits of insurability. But as I think more awareness and more people came forward to buy the insurance, at the same time the incidents of terrorism fell down, it has become very much commercially insurable. Otherwise, if the situation would not have improved, it would have remained uninsurable. I think the answer is in the scale. There is absolutely no comparison, though they might look in terms of the catastrophic impact similar, but there is absolutely no comparison in my understanding. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
There was
Final quick question, sir.
Right.
Yeah, please.
There was a reference to regulation. Okay, so here I'd like to go back to that KK Supreme Court case. So that time there were questions on safety of KK. So that was handled by AERB, it was DAE, ERC and NPC, all of them coming together, and the Supreme Court took statements from all of them to ensure the safety. So that was done, and that tells about the safety culture of DAE. That is the way these 22 plants are running. Everybody is responsible. All the four organizations are responsible. But now we are talking about hundreds of reactors, small, medium, large, everything coming into picture. So whatever whatever arrangement was there for these 22 plants, can we say that the same thing can continue when the number of plants are going up with the SMRs? Can we say like that? Or does the risk increase, or does it really doesn't change? And the last one is what kind of interface like the insurance companies have with the regulators? So where they can discuss all these things. Fine, thank you.
I think if we just look at the number of units, I think every unit will give additional exposure. And if say there is a say 200 megawatt nuclear plant and another unit comes up with a 200 megawatt, and unless the technology is different or aging and all relevant underlying parameters are same, I think the risk simply multiplies.
Yes,
The probability just adds up. I mean, there is no way the risk goes down. Only thing is that since there is a pooling, the ability of the market in taking it as a common pool, the operators and the capital providers, which are insurance companies, taken together are better positioned because the corpus becomes larger. So some benefit can be passed on.
Yeah, but who are joining later should be paying more, logically. Who are joining early, the risk is less, the premium can be little less. So as the risk increases, the premium should go up. Slightly, maybe not to a very great extent. And finally, that interface with now the culture, the safety culture is changing. Where various private, public sector are coming into picture. It is not the DA culture or NPC or BRC culture or AERB. AERB will be there anyway. So how the risk will change with number of plants coming. So many plants will come. And the thing about safety, risk perception also changes. How it will be taken care of.
I can just answer on his behalf. Once the plant is in operation and it has got permission to operate, the insurance company is entitled to presume all are on equal footing. And if there is a differential experienced by or contemplated by regulator only, while giving the license, regulator can ensure that it becomes to equal footing, then only license given.
DA culture has to be inculcated across all organizations.
Right.
I will put it different thing. So you can say after me. Whenever we try to interpret any clause in the act which is passed by the statute, the strictly speaking, now I'll speak as a lawyer, it falls within the realms of the court when the matter goes before them based on the fact to interpret it, or the parliament who pass itself. Our interpretation as a stakeholder, your interpretation stakeholder has no meaning, and that cannot be taken as a view of that. So maybe the FAQs, which is even Ministry of External Affairs has published, that can throw light, though it doesn't have any legal mandate or enforceability per se. So for any law, I think interpretation we can discuss. We cannot be concluding on that.
Thank you. So I think, there are limitless. So, but our experts are here, and in the coffee break that we will have after two addresses, perhaps we can have offline discussion with them. So with this, I would be requesting Joshi sir for your final conclusion.
So it essentially boils down to, I think it is an industry problem that insurance is not understood as a risk management mechanism. People do try to see that if I have paid so much, what am I getting in return? And all this, with due respect, the expectation of the payback, the claim recovery, the no claim bonus, ultimately there is no free lunch. and the real use of insurance is if there is a risk transfer. Thank you.
Choudhary.
If you see the basic reason why this legislation was brought, in case anything goes wrong, and I am sure our AIB friends ensure that before giving the license, nothing goes wrong, and the probability is very less. But in case anything goes wrong, the persons who have been adversely affected should not be left high and dry. So no fault liabilities have been established, and that is being taken care by insurer. All consequential questions and fears were existing beforehand also. Without Section 17B also, a purchaser can sue the supplier for the negligence and all that. But only because now it is highlighted, people are worried about all that. So I think that's what only I would say.
Your final conclusion remarks.
Yeah, basically, insurance again, it's a risk spreading mechanism, and based on that principle only we are working, whether it is pool or non-pool. So, we hope to build up a more robust corpus for this and take it forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you all the speakers, panelists for your participation. And now with this, we wrap up this discussion. Thank you very much. After this panel, now we are having Mr. Navneet Nair from EDF. He's a Supply Chain Development and Localization Manager. And he will be speaking on Jaitapur EPR project, key opportunities for local and global supply chain partners. So I request Mr. Nair to please come on the dais. Mr. Nair.
Distinguished guests, good afternoon. I'm Navneet Nair. I'm part of EDF's International Nuclear New Development Directorate. We are in charge of commercializing the French EPR technology worldwide. We will see those details in the presentation. I work specifically on the 6 EPR Jaitapur nuclear power plant offer, and I'm in charge of supply chain development and localization. It is a great pleasure for me to participate in this event today, especially after tough talks by previous speakers and panelists on risk appetite and changing of culture with respect to insurance. I feel my task is a little easier because I'm going to speak about business perspectives, and commercial parties present here today would have an easier time giving their attention. At least I hope so. So at this point in time, in particular, when our industry is finally back in favor, as world economies are seeking to decarbonize and boost in energy independence, after a number of difficult years post-Fukushima, we are finally starting to see an increase in political will and momentum. As mentioned yesterday by our Senior Vice President Development, EDF is strongly committed to delivering the JNPP project. So once again, great to be here today in this favorable context to talk about opportunities for local and global supply chain in the frame of the JNPP project. I'm sure that almost all of you in this conference know by heart the JNPP project by now, and that you're all eagerly waiting for it to get signed and get started. But just in case, I will begin my presentation with a quick introduction and update on the JNPP offer before moving on to the main topic. So on this slide, you have an overview of the EPR projects worldwide in different phases of development. We have 3 units of EPRs which are under operation in the world. there are 2 reactors in Taishan and 1 in Olkiluoto in Finland. So it shows that our technology of reactors of 16,500 megawatts is proven and functioning. We have another reactor at Flamanville in France, which is under construction. And we have under commissioning, sorry. And we have 2 units in Hinkley Point C in UK and Somerset region on the west of England, where we have currently 2 reactors which are being built. And then we have a very large pipeline of projects which have been under development for quite some time. And the favorable context I was mentioning earlier, we hope that we can convert some of these projects and move them up the ladder. And it is especially the case for the second one that you see on screen, because this slide is not up to date in that manner. Because Sizewell C, as you may know, has obtained the backing of the UK government recently, and they have decided to be a stakeholder in the project. So technically, it's not in the under development phase, but mostly in constructions have already started. But then coming to the project of interest for all of us, Jaitapur is first in line, as you can see. Negotiations have been going on, and we'll get back to it later. And we have also finally had a very positive decision in France with respect to renewing construction of new nuclear power plants, aging nuclear power plants in France. So it's been announced that 6 new power plants will be built in France. So it's the process of public consultation is underway, and we are hopeful that it will give way for these relaunching of the French nuclear industry. And there are 8 additional units which are in option. And then EDF has also submitted offers in Czech Republic very recently for 1 unit in Dukovany. And there are very promising prospects in Poland and Slovenia, Saudi Arabia, and Netherlands as well. So the EDF EPR technology, it relies on robust safety and features and proven systems. And it is adaptable to a wide variety of regulatory and environmental conditions. You can see all these countries in which we are commercializing our technology. So that is a very important point to note. And as I mentioned, we had quite a number of difficulties with our projects. The industry has taken maximum care in capitalizing all lessons learned moving forward, and it will be especially useful for all the projects that are in the pipeline and in development phase. So this is a quick overview of the JNPP project. What are we talking about? So each reactor I mentioned is 1650 megawatts, and the offer consists of 6 EPR units in Jaitapur with a combined capacity of 9.6 gigawatts electric. In terms of scope of work, EDF is in charge of the engineering and procurement scope, and the construction and commissioning is of NPCIL's scope of work. So EDF's binding offer to NPCIL covers a certain number of things. So we mentioned engineering and procurement as the scope of work, and it covers the full scope of engineering and procurement of the entirety of the power plant, so covering the different work packages. But on top of that, we also guarantee performances that we've sold to our customers, and we base ourselves on our thousands and millions of hours of operating experience of power plants in France to provide these guarantees. We also provide training services to NPCIL as an operator, future operator of our technology, and provide technical assistance over the course of the project. So this is the scope of our proposal to NPCIL. So on this slide, you have a quick overview of the major milestones that we have achieved up until now, starting from 2018 when EDF took over the negotiations for the JNPP project. So very recently, there's been last year in April, we submitted a binding offer to NPCIL, which was a major breakthrough, and following which we've we've made major strides in advancing in technical and commercial discussions with NPCIL, and both our teams have been working very hard on this recently. And we are aiming at submitting a final and binding offer beginning of next year. And we hope that this will pave way for the signature of a general framework agreement in the near future. So the key conditions, we mentioned CL&D and insurance. So having an acceptable framework is also a very key part of, moving forward with our GFA. And obviously, the financing of such a capital-intensive project is also one of the key conditions that need to be unblocked, just to name a few. So now let us move on to the main topic of my presentation today. What are the opportunities for the supply chain and the JNPP project, and how you can prepare effectively to be part of this great and ambitious project. To define and, first of all, we have to talk about the crucial role of procurement policy in nuclear new build project, such as Jetapur, because that is really key in preparing the groundwork necessary to integrate new players in the supply chain. So to define an effective procurement policy, first of all, we have to start by looking at the numbers. So this is just to give you an overview of where the plant cost distributions lie physically in a power plant. So almost around 40%, these are general numbers, around 40% of nuclear power plants' costs lie in the nuclear island. And then we have 30% of costs linked to civil works and marine works, 20% costs which are attributed to the conventional island side and the turbine included. And we have the remaining 10%, which is what we call balance of plants. So this gives you a rough idea of how the costs are distributed within a nuclear power plant as a whole. And then we look at the activities. So we speak about in our jargon of EPCC projects, engineering, procurement, and construction and commissioning. We have 15 to 20% of the total project cost, which lies in engineering activities. It depends on if it's the first unit or if it's you can benefit from economies of scale. So this is just ballpark range of how much costs can be attributed to engineering activities. 35 to 40% is linked to procurement activities. So to make it simple, there's a lot of stuff to buy. And then construction and commissioning, including civil works, that covers around 40% of the project cost. So as you can see, first of all, the 40% of project cost, which is construction and commissioning, is already in NPCIL scope. So it's therefore, as in any fleet mode or existing project, it is fully localized. And then when it comes to the scope of EDF and our partners, on the engineering costs, so we are working since many years in setting up what we call an engineering platform, and we hope to localize around 1/3 of our engineering activities in India, specifically for detailed design and ready for execution drawing productions in India. So that's what we can say about localization on the engineering front. And in the procurement part, so we've been coming very frequently to India over the past many years. So we have a very good understanding of the industrial capabilities in India. I see familiar faces today present. So we've been in touch with industrial champions, and we've been working towards identifying what we can localize and how. And we'll get into that methodology a little bit later in the presentation. So enough of theory. Maybe now we can see how it translates in real life in a real project under construction. So earlier I mentioned Hinkley Point C, where we have 2 reactors under construction. So here, compared to Jetapur that we spoke about, the difference is EDF has the entire scope. So we have engineering, procurement, construction, and commissioning, and we deliver the product to Britain. So here you have some numbers which gives you an idea of what it signifies to have a nuclear new build project in a country. So Britain relies entirely on EDF in rebuilding its nuclear capacity, starting with HPC and then with Sizewell, as I mentioned. So as of end of 2021, we have over 600 suppliers who are involved as tier 1 to EDF, and more than 5,000 individual tier 2 companies. So those are real numbers. So it gives you an idea. And out of these companies, 65% of them are British. However, building a power plant requires a participation from many countries, so in total, the international supply chain involves 42 countries, suppliers from 42 countries. France has obviously, and Europe, and our historic supply chain has a very important role in building this power plant. And our historic supply chain and British suppliers, these 65% of companies, have been working together closely to hand in hand to develop their competencies, and enormous efforts and significant investments were made in human capacity building. So that's recruiting local resources and developing the skills required to build and later on operate power plants. So the economic impact of a project such as Hinkley Point C in the UK economy is 18 billion pounds. That gives you some idea, and 71,000 direct, indirect, and induced jobs thanks to this project. So that's the kind of impact we're talking about when we speak about nuclear power plant projects. So we are close to Christmas and New Year. So you may assume this is a picture of fireworks in UK, but I'm sorry to disappoint. So the central point that you can see here is the site, HPC power plant site, and each of these lines signifies some kind of contribution from British companies, may it be in the form of supply of equipment or logistics or construction, civil works. And so it shows, that it involves practically the entire country. So when we say 65% of suppliers are British, it shows you a concrete example of how it can look like. And you can start to imagine that when we speak about Jetapur, which is 6 units, you can transpose this to the western coast, Konkan coast in Jetapur. Okay. So that gives you an idea. So I'll have to speed up a little bit. So in our approach, as we saw in HPC, we rely strongly on collaboration between our established supply chain and Indian companies. So each party has something to bring to the table, which is quite different, because Indian suppliers obviously know the local context, the rules and regulations and codes and everything, and our historic supply chain knows our codes of construction and has experience working with us. So we strongly believe, as you might have understood from my presentation, in localization, and we feel that it is a major performance lever for us to have a competitive offer to NPCIL. So now I'd like to focus on how we go about in general in defining the local content, what we localize in terms of equipments and activities, and how we calculate the cost impact. So very quickly, this process has already been done many times with most of you present, and some even till the ultimate step of qualification. But to make it simple, we do sourcing activities, and one of them, we organize annually Suppliers Day, when we meet with suppliers, and we also take initiative in contacting suppliers on our own, and we send what we call requests for information. We do a pre-selection, and we go about evaluating suppliers through a mock, tendering process, where we send, after signing an NDA, real specifications, and we do a test to see if they're able to understand our specifications, reply as per our requirements, and see the economic viability and if competitiveness of suppliers. So we've done all these evaluations, and the ultimate step of qualification is reserved. It will be really started only after we have a GFA, because it implies a lot of cost and effort and time from our side, but also from the supplier side. So we want to time it properly and start it off only when the time is right. However, we have done 2 supplier qualification tests this year. They've been very, very positive. And so this was just to see how we can adapt our process to India in preparation to JNPP. But on the previous steps that I mentioned, which are sourcing, pre-selection, and evaluation, you can have an idea about the activities that were conducted since the past few years. And also very important to note, we have long-standing partnerships with key players in India that is really very useful and helpful to us. And we spoke about the engineering platform as well that we are building with our partners in India and in Europe. Let's skip quickly. So here, what I can say about how you can contribute. This slide is important because we have how are we going to do the procurement for JNPP. There is the scope of activity that we will not localize, at least in the first few units, and we will be doing the tendering process as we do for international projects from France, and the tendering will really target our historic supply chain. Indian players will not be involved directly, and then you have the onshore scope, which is the local content, for which we'll create a subsidiary for the JNPP project, and we will launch tenders from India, and all qualified and evaluated suppliers can participate in the competitive bidding process. And there is no cross competition between both. So you have 2 worlds which are quite clearly demarcated. But then there's the gray zone, which is the indirect localization, and it goes on both sides. Basically, indirect localization is the scope that we do not intend to localize fully, but we rely on our historic supply chain to create partnerships with Indian players, create subsidiaries in India, and or even subcontract to Indian suppliers and gain in competitivity and be more, get the offers for themselves. So one of our key message is, JNPP may take time or has taken time, but preparing for JNPP starts as soon as possible by working on opportunities from our historic supply chain, on working on the Indian market. They can bring in expertise from their side, and on the other way around, we have many projects going on, including Sizewell C, and we have many Indian suppliers who are in touch with us to see how they can contribute to our ongoing projects worldwide. This helps in learning how to work together and pave the way and be ready when JNPP will be a reality. We have also MOUs which have been signed between GFEN, which is the association representing all our historic supply chain, and FICCI on the other side. So that's something we count on as well to foster relationships between Indian and our historic supply chain. So if you wish to, you can leverage on this as well. The contacts have been mentioned, so don't hesitate to get in touch if you're part of these organizations especially. So now, as a summary, how to get ready as a newcomer for the Jetapur project. First and foremost, there's been presentations earlier in this conference about ISO 19443 standards. So upgrading your quality systems and being ready with that is the first step. Training to new codes. So our construction codes I mentioned are specific to our technology. So that takes time to assimilate and gain experience in, and that will be crucial. and obviously developing alliances with our historic suppliers. And we do our best at EDF to try to promote these partnerships beforehand. That's why every year we organize EDF Suppliers Day. The next one will be held on 23rd of February in Mumbai. So please do participate. You have the email if you wish to participate. It's free for Indian suppliers. So please do come. And you have an idea of the tentative agenda. The morning part would be presentations, and the afternoon will be entirely dedicated to B2B meetings. So we'll come with our historic supply chain. So you can come in and take meetings and start discussing what are the prospects of collaboration while awaiting for JNPP. Thank you so much. So in conclusion, let's say our industry is at an important crossroads, and it is up to all of us to seize this opportunity to rise up to the challenge of revival of industry on a massive scale. And it is upon our shoulders as well to show that we've learned from our past difficulties and that we can deliver on time, on budget, and with the highest level of quality and safety standards. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Nair, for your elaborate presentation on how the EDF is working on Jaitapur project and the important new developments and then emerging opportunities for Indian nuclear suppliers. So now with this address by Mr. Nair, we are moving to our next address, and which is going to be the final address, closing address for this event. I'm delighted to invite Mr. Shahnawaz Ahmed, Senior Advisor, World Nuclear Association. Floor is yours.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much.
Green one is
Forward. Thank you very much for many loyalists staying back after a fairly heavy session. The best thing about being the last speaker is, or the bad thing about being the last speaker is, that almost all the good things that needed to be said have been said. The good thing is you can have the last word, which is not always possible at home. I would like to sort of say that the sort of presence that we have here as an association has the who's who of the nuclear industry. Whether I talk Rosatom, whether I talk EDF, whether I talk Westinghouse, or some of our logistic members coming all the way to Mumbai, thank you. Yes, and I hope Mumbai will be happy for you. Well, we are an international association, and whilst everyone knows the Indian Atomic Energy Agency, and NPCIL and many of the other people here know WANO, we are the bridging gap between what the IEA says you can and should do, and we are the people who do it, or at least our members are the ones who do it. And we already have 2 members doing things for you here already, and a 3rd member waiting in the wing, ready to do. As for the spread of the activity we have members right from law to logistics to, of course, the vendors, supply chain, and believe it or not, about 70% of the world's operators are members with us. And in spite of WANO having 100% membership. Well, this is the world, and it is very inequitably distributed. So when we talk of energy transformation, the cry from much of the developing world is also energy justice. That the transition cannot be unjust. And how do we make it just is not only a political, but also a technical discussion. And we do believe that a part of the just transition effort belongs to nuclear. Well, this is where we are today. We generate about 10% of the world's electricity. We are the second largest nuclear, I'm talking of, as the second largest green technology. But we are nowhere near where we need to be. When you move to developing countries, the argument that is given is the word newcomer. And the word newcomer has its connotations which are not really true. Because as you would see, the spread of nuclear technology, courtesy the IAEA, is almost worldwide. And the fact that many who are newcomer power countries are people with a long historical record of nuclear research and development. Therefore, much of the framework, much of the know-how already exists. And you would see that whilst you have about 35 countries now having nuclear power programs, there are over 50 countries which already have been operating research reactors for a much, much longer time. And the reason why I'm concentrating on research reactors just now is, when you come to SMRs, you find that a lot of these research reactor concepts, which were diluted when you started building large PWR and PHWR plants, are coming back to us. I find this as an interesting slide because when we talk of the role of nuclear power, some of the agencies which are supposed to be pro-nuclear in the normative scale are talking a much lower percentage of nuclear, but some of the fossil fuel companies are willing to contribute much larger to the nuclear framework. In the recent conditions, we find that security, particularly when you go to smaller countries in Africa or even Southeast Asia, security is a very big concern. Now, what is security has a very wide range, but I would like to go with the IEA definition. And how much are you dependent on import? How much is the what you call variety of sources from which you generate electricity? And what is your energy storage capability? And one would easily say that item number 1 and 3 are nuclear's strength. When you come to sustainability, you will find that we are scoring nuclear on many aspects which are very close to the policy making in the United Nations, particularly for climate change, for sustainability, and for meeting the UN social development goals. I will just concentrate on a few. Carbon emission, we know we are tops. We also find that in terms of land area utilization, in spite of all the ring fencing we are doing, nuclear is the best in renewables or in green technology. But I think which may be of most interest just now in the economic stage is that for every, it's a European study, so we'll have to use the word euro. For every euro invested, you get 4 times that credit in the GDP indirectly. And you generate I'll have more details for this later, a fair number of good quality jobs. Essentially, an argument that is used is what is renewable is the fuel source. Solar is renewable because the sun doesn't hide itself. So uranium is very close to that because it has three advantages that is almost universally distributed, unlike some of the other items we'll see later, which means that you have an assured supply. The IAEA has what you call now contributing to a fuel bank, and it has no other use. And there is sufficient quantity available for a long time. So I know people like Dr. Chidambaram have been trying for some time that nuclear should be termed as virtually renewable. So perhaps that ought to be considered. Well, this is something that all of us know. Our CO2 advantage, and we are amongst the lowest. Maybe wind is actually lower than us, but only marginally. But this should be an interesting slide. There's an old saying that came up during the early days of the solar energy, that if we are to supply Rome through solar, all the Romans will have to go out of Rome because we'll have to cover Rome with solar panels. And you have a stress on many other areas like biomass or hydro, where the environmental impact can be very, very severe. We know what methane does to the universe. But I thank Westinghouse for this rather drastic looking slide. And if I were to build a 225 megawatt SMR of Westinghouse, then these are the figures that we will be talking of. And this is not to say that you would not like to live on the downstream of such a large wind farm. This is where we aren't, nuclear is not really a top competitor because of the thermal cycle or Rankine cycle that you use. And therefore, we are amongst the larger user of water resource. But I think this should be something that is of interest to all of us. And this is not from a pro-nuclear organization. So essentially, this is an organization that found it very difficult to fund nuclear. Nuclear was not on its list. But if these figures tell you anything, it is that if the impact is going to be 4.11 for every dollar spent or every rupee spent, the GDP is going to grow by 4.11. A lot of it depends upon these are based on overnight costs. So if you build a plant within the planned time, which was, let us say, 6 years today, because many plants have been able to achieve that below 6 years, this could fall substantially from 4.11 impact on GDP to a much lower value, depending upon the cost of the debt that you have. But even then, you will find that you are obviously going to be very substantially better than, let us say, solar. So I think, if nothing else, this by itself should be a very good motivating factor for the case for nuclear. Thank you, Idia, for the slide that you put. Since we're also London-based, essentially we use British government data for everything. But this should be interesting in a very different way, that these quality of jobs that are required for nuclear, first of all, they are a large number of jobs, but the quality of job tends to go to specialists, high-paying jobs distributed all over the country. In these days of Brexit, I think it's very important for nations to have a technology that brings it so much cohesiveness. I think this is another thing that should make us feel good about nuclear, because if you see the amount of actual material use you have, who's the worst contributor in green technology? Because you use up a lot of land, you use up a lot of space, and you use a lot of concrete. So, I mean, you disturb the ecology without fault. That is, under normal operations, you're disturbing the ecology so much that nations' views of hydro have changed. But nuclear scores very well, and not only that, but also in terms of the expensive materials. Though we see a lot of steel compared to the steel in what you call hydroelectric plant, it is nothing. This is the easy part. So we have 437 reactors and 7 technologies. But I would compliment the regulator for absorbing more than one technology at a time. I'm sure you find it very challenging and you find it very educative, of course, but definitely when you have to take a decision, it takes time. You have to build the manpower for it, and you have to keep that manpower specialized in that technology. What happens tomorrow? I mean, I'm sorry to contradict some of our earlier speakers, but these are smaller reactors already operating. And the reason why I put them up is some of the configurations for the reactor are already defined fairly well here. So it is not that the, what you call, reactor technology or reactor part of it is unknown for some of the SMRs at least. But what happens now? These are the reactors that are expected to come in the near term, and the near term we are defining as 5 to 10 years. And some of our members, and I'm proud to say, are talking 3 years. So we are not talking beyond 2025 to 2030. And these technologies will be available to you at least in demonstrative form. What happens to the regulator? What happens to the, what you call, a company like NPCIL or NTPC, which has to choose? And that is where standardization, that is where harmonization, that is where an understanding, you cannot stop this because this is research and it will be, some of these technologies will die out and only few will survive. But till then, you would have to wait for another 10, 15, 20 years to come to that level. So please get ready for a job that's going to get even more difficult. And for what purpose? See, I do find that heat use, yes, but I'm always a bit messed up when we talk of a hydrogen system. Would you like to have hydrogen in your car? What happens if your daughter happens to have an accident? It makes your mind freeze. So we are going to talk of a hydrogen technology and hydrogen usage where quality would have to be very near to that, what you are doing in nuclear. So it also is a challenge. It's not an easy thing. And I don't think it would be easy to say that I will have a hydrogen plant sitting next to a nuclear plant. It would require much the deeper analysis, much deeper understanding, and much deeper safety levels. But I'm sure that with better software, particularly, we should be able to see through some of these scenarios. This is LCOE. We can talk of LOE, we can talk of many things. But you're talking of a 7% discount rate, which is astronomical by European or US terms. So we are talking of a spread of a value that should be very disadvantageous to nuclear, but still you're finding that nuclear is. And I think the best thing about this is that the spread of nuclear is very small. So even if you have local variations, at least international studies show that the nuclear would remain within that level. But I have an even more interesting, but it's not a slide, it's just data. When you spread it across the two limits of what has normatively been the industrial discount rate, between 3% to 10%, in most countries, nuclear is still not only competitive, but amongst the cheapest. And this is data that is in many of the countries available publicly. This is not data that is coming from a single source. For some of the countries, it could be true, but this is data coming from multiple sources. If you want to borrow money from the West, perhaps you will have to go through the process of what the EU has gone through in its taxonomy effort. And I think that is where, now I will do a bit of drum beating of what the World Nuclear Association has been doing. We have worked with the EU, OECD, NEA, IMF, the World Bank, and now the IFRB to say that nuclear financing is possible, feasible, and necessary. And obviously, it has many factors on the technology side. But what we are very happy to say, though it is only half a victory, is that nuclear is now considered as a transition technology comparable to gas, which, of course, is a sort of victory. From when we started the negotiations, the EU councils were unwilling to discuss nuclear. There was too much pressure. And even then, there were some countries which sort of did not vote against it, but protested against it. But I think the two things that the industry has contributed to is that, yes, we need to reduce the risk of an accident. And that is where industry-government dialogue becomes important, that the accident-tolerant fuel is an issue that we have been discussing within the World Nuclear Association and the industry for the last 10 years. And we were able, at some level, to convince the political class in the EU to say that the ATFs are there and that the next reloads in many reactors, particularly in the Western world, will be ATF. With the accident-tolerant fuel, you have several advantages, but I think the biggest advantage is political or conceptual or in public domain. And that necessarily had to be built on solid technical evidence. So, but the tricky part is that we were able to tell the EU Commission that don't ask for a deep geological repository today, because we have the capacities to store the fuel without transportation in our nuclear reactors. And we have proved that the fuel can be dry stored after some time. But what the World Nuclear Association would like to take feel pride in is both the demonstration products were given by members of the World Nuclear Association. And of course, by default, the association takes credit for it, though the members are the ones. But particularly, we have to talk of the repository because the Finland repository by Posiva, which is a private firm, is in the advanced stage that they have started digging. And only when, believe me, only when this was made available to the EU, that someone is willing to invest money into whatever concepts that have proved. But still, obviously, every country or every geographical location cannot have a repository immediately. And for instance, I think in India, we are on record to say that we don't need a deep geological repository just now. So that is the, but I think the worst thing, and which the nuclear community needs to grant, the Commission says it will review this and take away the exception. So we have perhaps, we feel the next vote will not happen for another 5 years. So we have 5 years for international marketing of international finance if we meet these commitments. Now, having said that, obviously the designating nuclear as green or non-green is a sovereign right. So obviously, countries that have problems go through, for instance, Indonesia is a very classical example because culturally and in very attitudes to government, Indonesia is very close to India. And what they are saying is they are great coal users. They have a large amount of gas. So what they wish to do is to put between green and black, a gray area. We can say the way you're talking of blue hydrogen or whatever it is. And obviously, perhaps within our country, since we have a lot of support from the government for nuclear, perhaps it will be declared as a part of technology. But I think the proof of the pudding will be here. Because eventually, accounting, as Mr. Mago will tell us after having worked in CMM, is what matters. When you are taking international finance, then you have to tell every rupee or every dollar the use and that it was used in the intended way. So, getting to IFRS and getting them on board for nuclear is something that we are trying very hard because at the end of the day, once they set the standards, which will be substantially different for nuclear perhaps, they would be accepted internationally, if not entirely, at least as a reference case. And in the United States, for instance, it will become law. So we are on an uptrend, but the uptrend has its own problems. But here is another solution that is available, which historically, since we are extending the life of the plants, I don't have to sort of, Mr. Srinivasan sitting there, we don't have to say it, but I will say it loud still, that when Tarapur was inspected as a reactor that was built on Section 8, not Section 3, we find that its life can be extended. And today it's the oldest operating reactor in the world. And I think India needs a hand clap for that. We have the second longest running reactor. We also have the oldest reactor. And in the United States, of course, generally, the United States is a very knowledge-based country. So they are always up and going much earlier than many of us. They have been studying both the forced closures of plants for economic reasons, of nuclear power plants because of economic reasons, And therefore, what happens to this invested amount? So I don't have the exact figure because the report that I saw, I could not authenticate it. But if you see the last slide, I believe that report said that if you refurbish a plant at 5-year intervals, then you could generate electricity at half the rate of that a new built plant in the United States. So essentially, when you are talking of a plant, like I believe Tarapur was 35 or 40 years, sir? 40 years, I think, initial life of the plant. Yeah, this would be 50%, yes. But in the US, so in India, it may not be substantially that different, but it could be 75%, 60% of the cost. Huh? No, what I'm talking of is the 60-year life. When you had a 40-year life, and now you extend it to 60 years, then the cost of production will be half that, as if you had built the reactor for 20 years at half the cost. So that is an asset value addition that happens only into buildings like the Victoria Terminus or the Taj Mahal. You know, you cannot, assets don't increase. But since you took enough care in the beginning, you ran it properly, you can actually increase the asset value. No property value increases with time, except the land value, of course. So when you demolish it, you can get more money. As far as the supply chain is concerned, my data may be a bit outdated. The reason is that we are releasing our bi-yearly report tomorrow in Korea. So I am not authorized to release that information to you till someone has handed over the report to the KHNA chairman. But this is my year before last data. But I think it's substantially because I think nothing much would have changed. So where are we? When we generate 10% of the electricity, we generate 250,000 jobs in operation and 500,000 around the world, and these are high quality jobs. We have a good supplier base, but the unqualified people are collapsing. And therefore, because it's expensive, business was not there. But the tendency for newcomer countries to have unqualified people is rising. And in some of the countries, we saw that the unqualified people are actually people dealing in petroleum or people deal in naval architecture. So these are the two people who are qualifying themselves at the end level because they see business in nuclear. We are competitive. The fairly large number of suppliers. International supply chain offer many opportunities, of course. But the sense of quality or the need for quality and therefore the oversight of vendors down the line is very important. But with ADF had, mentioned that in more detail. When you talk of small modular reactors, the business model obviously will be different. But everything depends on two things. Your ability to build a large enough number and install them, having a refueling cycle at least of several years. And if you're going to put them in remote places, maybe for the life of the reactor. And of course, when you're going to have a lot of suppliers, you will have to maintain quality. And some of these international efforts by ISO 19443, etc. come in. And this is some area that I personally take pride in because I think our ability to submit operating permission requests to AERB permitted us to be grilled by people like by Mr. Srinivasan. And it has educated us to say that as an industry organization, we can deal with the NBP, which is a regulators organization internationally, and India is an observer or a member. I think it's a member now, where we focus on bringing to the regulator what the industry can do or cannot do, and therefore adjusting some timeframes. One of it you saw about the ATF or the DGR, but more importantly, in the effort to harmonize, because when you are going to have 30 different kinds of technologies being evaluated simultaneously, and I mean, it may not be the Indian regulator who would evaluate 30, 40, but it's the US regulator is evaluating them. The Canadian regulator is evaluating 8 to 10, I think 8. So how does the industry convey, as you had very rightly put, the basic physics to say this is what it is, and to say that this is how it will remain in safety terms? I think this should be my last slide. Sorry, take 2 more minutes. Well, this is a split up that may be a bit different from what was presented earlier, because we have sort of taken it as an international harmonization with some weighted factors for different countries. And the point that I really made earlier was that we not only have to think in terms of supply of equipment, but we can also think from India as a supply of know-how. A lot of this area that you see in activities, we can perhaps contribute. And this is item-wise, which seems to be the major interest of most of the people present here. But if you would see that labor, for instance, is 25%. Some of these things come as a very interesting part of the job. So if we concentrate only on the nuclear steam supply system, we are only contributing 12%. But we're doing perhaps the hardest job and probably the best profit margin.
Are these data geographic agnostic? I mean, in Western countries, will they remain safe? Or?
See, what we have done, the methodology is slightly fuzzy, but what we have done is that those people building plants today, we have given a greater weightage to. The number of plants obviously get a greater weightage. So this data may be what we call skewed in certain areas, for instance, labor costs. For instance, knowing the labor cost in China is a challenge. So the figures that come out from there are fairly low. But if I was to build it in, let me say, Eastern United States, it may be double that. But having said that, this has to be taken as ballpark figures for international, when India decides to contribute to international commerce. To me, this is the most interesting part, that yes, this is the whole area of work, but people with different responsibilities sit somewhere, and they are the downstream players where the numbers keep on increasing. And as you go down the line, the dilution of what we call nuclear standards could occur. So that is where, when you give large contracts, when you're talking of a single or 2 contracts for a major plant, that is where the owner or the technology vendor has to spend. We have published literature on what we call supplier oversight, which we found very, very taxing. But if you see, most of what we are talking of are from tier 3 to tier 6. Within the rest of the tier 1 and tier 2 remain with NPCIL just now. And of course, this is a more pictorial way of saying what is used where. But I think this is where we need to concentrate in international commerce, because you will need a lot of these rare earths, which are not, availability is not at the same level as that of luckily uranium. So this is where rare earths are available, and this is where we are good at mining, but the availability is substantially limited. It may be enough for our use, but some of the other items may be more troublesome. So if you want boron, better have good friends with Turkey. And I think what we need to do, eventually public awareness, we are talking always, is don't talk nuclear power. Talk of public benefits of nuclear, and then talk of nuclear power. And I will like to end that I think we need to bring the technology of communication to the communication of technology. We have been talking down to people, giving data, but as Mother Teresa used to say, that love is more important than truth, because eventually the truth that I tell you, for it to become your truth, should be my empathy with your needs. And we can sell any amount of toothpaste we want. But why are we not selling nuclear at that level? When alternative green sources of toothpaste, like in the miswak, are available. Thank you. We have to have a paradigm shift if we have to create it. Thank you.
What an interesting address to have at the end of this session. And with this closing address by Mr. Shahnawaz Ahmed, we are wrapping up the third edition of INBP 2022. We have had several interesting sessions throughout these 2 days, starting with our keynote address. Dr. Kakodkar elaborated about the kind of opportunities that we are having, something around 28,000 terawatt hours, and out of which only, even if we consider this renewal, which is going at such a rapid pace, that would be able to contribute something around 8,000 terawatt hours only. So 20,000 terawatt hours is something, where nuclear has an opportunity to contribute. And then we had interesting session on project management, ownership, responsibility, and sort of the interface management are some of the issues that we discuss, and which are sort of the things that need to be improved as far as the efficient program delivery is concerned. And then in the supply chain side, we have had interesting discussions. What sort of opportunities are there for the localization? But localization is not just for getting the things done in India, but it's about cost reduction strategies of several companies, and those companies will have kind of a lever to explore and expand their international business by being in India and making for the world. And today we started a session with the NTPC. It's a very good for the industry that a power giant of India is finally entering into the nuclear sector. It's quite a good news for all of us. And particularly, they will be focusing not just on SMR. SMR is, for the sites which will be getting evacuated as a result of aging of coal plants. But they would be focusing on large reactors also, as we could guess from their presentation that they and the literature that they availed to us. And in the financing section, we had a very good presentation from NPCIL, which are quite thought-provoking in the sense that everybody talks that nuclear is basically it doesn't make any sense as far as the business is concerned, but through those discussions we could now assess that nuclear makes a lot of business sense. And in the insurance session, we are thankful to our experts from the insurance sector, GIC, who joined us and clarify the doubts of our several participants. It was really interactive session. And finally, we could assess the EDF and Rosatom, all such international companies which are there already in India. They are and Westinghouse, of course. So they are progressing, and we have had a presentation from EDF on the development and localization opportunities. So several opportunities are there. And finally, we had an international perspective by Mr. Shahnawaz Ahmed, who basically brought out how the nuclear is gaining prominence not just in India but across the globe. The Western world, which had almost abandoned nuclear for almost 2 or 3 decades, now finally they are rising and they are exercising, and they are sort of getting into the nuclear as a viable option for to meet their energy requirement. So with this, I thank all the participants, all the distinguished guests and dignitaries, leaders from industry who have joined us for this annual conference of INBP, 3rd edition. And I'm very, very thankful to everyone and our sponsors. With these remarks, I would like to request our Managing Director, Mr. Zaf Coelho, to please come on the dais and for the thanking message.
Thank you, Vinay. And as Vinay mentioned, a very, very big thank you to all our participants, to all our brave souls who have stayed back to all the way to the second day of the conference. Usually the second day it's a bit of a downer, so we are really heartened to see such almost a full room of participants. Of course, once again, we would like to express our sincere appreciation to our local key support, which is Nuclear Power Corporation of India Limited, NPCIL, for partnering with us to make this a very successful conference. We also would like to express our sincere appreciation to all our sponsors and exhibitors. We have IEEE, we also have Asitam STUP, we have Hilti, Kona Cranes, and also Michelle Bearings. We hope to look forward to meeting you all in Mumbai next year. Most likely it's going to be in November after Diwali. And at the same time also, Nuclear Business Platform also does lots of activities in other emerging markets. We do work in Africa. We'll be hosting a conference together with the government of Uganda in Kampala in March, focusing on nuclear development in sub-Saharan Africa. We are hosting a conference also with the TSO of Turkey in Antalya in May, a conference plus a site visit to the Akuyu nuclear power plant site. And also, again, Mumbai next year, and possibly a conference focusing on the Asian market in Korea next year, second half. So if you are also looking to participate in our international activities, feel free to reach out to us. Nonetheless, once again, thank you very much for your support. You guys have been a great, great audience. Really enjoyed the interactive discussions. And if on behalf of the organizers, we fell short of any of expectations, please accept our sincere apologies. And lastly, for all presentations, once again, you will receive a PDF copy in a couple of days after the conference. And if anything, please drop Vinay or myself an email if you have any feedback or questions or remarks. With that, thank you very much. Have a nice evening. Bye-bye. Oh yeah, there's a coffee and reception outside. The final one. Thank you.